Hello YouTube. So today I want to talk about Swerve. Now we talked yesterday about drag draw, and the concept behind drag draw is basically when you hit below center, the cue ball spins backwards for a little ways, then it slides, then it rolls forward. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go all through drag draw and how that works. Again, I highly recommend that if you have not watched it, you watch yesterday's key concept on drag draw before you do this video. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it, come back, and this video will make a lot more sense in context with that background. And that video also includes how to practice the drag draw, which will set you up to be able to do this shot correctly. Okay, so Swerve. We all know the basic use of Swerve. The basic use of Swerve is I'm blocked by a ball and I need to get around it to make a ball. So I'm going to swerve around the 9 and get it. And so most of the time when you see this in a pro tournament, it's because there's just an edge of the ball in the way. But you can swerve, if you've got a full table shot like this one, you can swerve all the way around the ball. It's actually not that hard to do, especially if your object ball is near a rail, because that helps to give you a little bit more margin for error. So that's the first use of Swerve. If I've got that 4 ball and my only shot is in the corner, I can make that an easier shot by swerving out this way and back into it to make the angle coming into it this instead of this. So Swerve can be used to alter the angle coming into the shot to make the shot easier. And also, because it is inside English, it means that when it does come in, it's going to spin off the rail and push the ball in the correct direction. So how do we execute a swerve? Well, the idea behind a swerve relies on a couple of things. So first, we need to know that if this is the face of the cue ball, as you're looking at it, and remember the whole perspective thing I did a couple times ago, that counts here. If we were to draw a line vertically, directly vertically, and this is the center of the cue ball, okay? Hitting in the center region does not help us at all. We need to hit down in these bottom quadrants to be able to swerve. And the idea is, if I hit it here, this angle, not a very good angle, but that angle is the angle the cue ball is going to go after it turns over. So here's my rail. I've got a ball on the rail. I've got a ball that I'm trying to pocket down here. Okay, and I'm using one close to the pocket because the closer it is to the pocket, the easier it is to make, right? So we're not going to be doing swerves on super long, hard, difficult cuts that have to be precise. We're going to be doing swerve on ones where we have rails nearby that we can take advantage of. Or where we're only swerving a very small bit and it's not going to throw us outside of the variance allowed by the width of the pocket. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so if I take my cue ball and I shoot it down, this is the direction of travel, which is represented by the vertical line through the center of the cue ball. The angle of the swerve, if this is, let's say, a 20-degree angle, then this would be a 20-degree angle on the swerve. And yes, it actually is almost a sharp turn like that. This point right here is that in our drag draw. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to shoot past the ball with speed so it turns over when it's next to the ball, and we're going to put an angle on it using our, let's redo this because that's not accurate for that shot. That shot would be about that angle, so we need to hit it right there. Okay? I hope that makes sense to you. So, to execute this shot, I'm going to hit it like I said there. I'm going to come just past. I want the cue ball to be just clear the ball that I'm on. Okay, and so let me mark where the cue ball is. Cue ball is right here. I'm not worried about marking the table because I'm 2 days away from them taking the rails away. So, all right, so the cue ball is going to go in. We're going to pass right here. Okay, that's where we're going to be when we go around it because we want to get close. We don't want to get right on top of it because if it turns too early, we might get in trouble. So we want to pass, give ourselves a reasonable distance between them. So if we look at this line, from, so if I put down some painter's tape to show the path of that cue ball, the original path of the cue ball, it's here. Okay? And by the way, I would not do that if I wasn't just getting ready to recover it. And then I put down painter's tape to show the angle that I want to be on. Okay? This angle in between these is the angle that I need to be on the cue ball. So if we look at our training cue ball, we want to hit this right in here, halfway between the numbers and the straight up and down. So this is our vertical line. We want to hit it as low as we can and halfway between to get that approximate angle. Okay? And when we do, if we overhit it a little bit, the reason we want to do this when it's close to the rails is if we overhit it a little and it comes off the rail, it still makes that ball. So that becomes a very easy swerve shot. Okay, so let me pull this tape up. So we're going to aim at this point right here. And we're going to look to have the cue ball turn over right about there, maybe a little further because it's hard to turn over that close, but we can do it, and then let it roll down the shot. So let's give this a try. Now, if you remember when I was talking about perspective, I talked about how as we can get access to parts of the cue ball we normally wouldn't have access to by raising the butt of the cue. Okay, well that comes into play here because if I hit this cue ball flat, I can only get so far down on the cue ball. And I really need to get to that edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my perspective a little bit. Maybe 30-degree lift on the back of the cue, just so that I can get real access to the very bottom part of that ball. Okay? Does that make sense? I'm going to want to get as low as I can on this shot. And I'm going to want to get the angle that I just drew out. And so to do that, I have to raise the back of my cue. Now bear in mind, because I'm shooting down into the table, I'm going to lose some of my momentum from in the transfer of energy from the cue ball to the table itself. So I have to hit this a little bit harder than I do a typical shot. So I'm going to come up about 30 degrees, aim for that spot in there. I'm going to hit it a little bit hard. And swerves right around and I make the shot. You see that? And this is easily repeatable, especially with the ball in the pocket like that. This is about as much as I would want to swerve. This is a full ball swerve. So we're coming out a full ball around. That's as much as you want to swerve. If you're going more than that, it's a Masse, and that's a different case. It's similar in the way it's executed, but the thought process in it goes a lot further. So again, we're just trying to get just past the 9, as thin as we can, then we're trying to swerve over to the side. So that's it. That's your swerve shot. That was going around a full ball at a full table distance. I mean, if you're shooting a shot, say, shooting a shot that's near the side and only a little bit of the ball is there, you might want to swerve this. It's the same theory. Get just past the 9, just far enough past the 9 to get around it. Have it turn over. You see, once you understand how to aim these and how to hit them, and you have the control of your drag draw shot, again, go back, watch the other video if you didn't. Once you have control of your drag draw shot, this becomes a simple thing to execute, and there are all kinds of different cases for it. I talked before about how if a ball's frozen to a rail, I can use a swerve shot to make my angle better. Now, this shot is an example of why I prefer solid wood shafts rather than low deflection. So low deflection shafts, I'm taking advantage of the deflection, okay? I'm using that deflection as part of my swerve to make me swerve further than I would. If you're using a low deflection shaft, you're going to have to play with this a little to get the right angles. You're going to have to go a little bit further than the actual angle of the shot. So like the 20 degrees I was talking about, you hit 20 degrees off on the ball, you may have to hit 30 degrees off because you're not getting the deflection from the shot, okay? You're going to have to play with that for your cue. For me, I use solid wood shafts. My deflection is predictable, and because my deflection is predictable, so is this shot. So I've got a really thin cut. The 4 is frozen or nearly frozen to the end rail. In this case, it's frozen, and I need to cut it over. So there's a couple of ways to execute this shot, and the one that you see about in the books is aim to the left of it and shoot with right hand English, right? So just spin it in. And that works. No doubt that works. But if you know how to swerve the ball, so I get a better angle on the shot, and I also can do more with the cue ball. I can control the cue ball a little bit better. Now honestly, on this shot, I'd be more likely to jump this because I've got plenty of room, right? But what if that's not a good jump shot? You've got a small landing area, the one is near the rail, which means that there's a chance that if you hit it too hard, it skips off the one and off the table. You can do this with a swerve fairly safely. So you can see all a swerve is getting it to go and turn over next to the ball, and then the English causes it to spin sideways. So that's really all there is to a swerve shot. They're not hard shots to perform. I would call them a routine shot to perform. Knowing how to swerve and knowing when to swerve are important. And the ball doesn't have to be in the pocket. The closer it is to the pocket, we're going to talk about this when we talk about the distance concept, but the closer it is to the pocket, the bigger the margin for error. So you could swerve a ball that's out like this and go around the edge. And you can do that. You can see that done pretty frequently. You see that done pretty frequently in competition. It's not that hard to do, but the closer the ball is to the pocket or to a rail, the better. Especially if the rail is one like this. Knowing that we're taking advantage of the deflection of the cue is important. So a low deflection cue, knowing that you have to hit it a little bit further over, is important. So that's the swerve shot. It's, in my opinion, it's actually one of the basic shots in pool. You have to be able to swerve. You do not have to be able to masse. And by the way, because masse is such a rare shot, I'm not going to cover it until much later. I've decided that masses, so in 12 years on the Pro Tour, plus all the videos that I've watched of all the games, I've seen a half dozen masses in pro play. And the reason is because they're so low percentage, they take an incredible amount of touch, and you have to know all the principles behind them to make them work. Unless you're going to be a trick shot artist, masses are really not important. And especially today with the jump cues, most shots that you would consider a masse on, you would also consider a jump, and because of the jump cues, you would take the jump rather than the masse. So since I only have a limited amount of time before they take the rails off, we'll cover jump shots next. The key to it is to know when to swerve, to know your swerve and your angles and how much you have to adjust. Because of the way I stroke, because I'm using a natural wood shaft rather than a low deflection shaft, it becomes very easy for me, because if I put a 10 degree angle on the cue ball, 10 degrees off of bottom center, then the cue ball swings 10 degrees. If I put 20, it swings 20, which really helps me, and it's a whole lot easier to shoot these with a natural wood shaft than it is low deflection, until you get used to whatever you have to add. With a low deflection, you might have to hit it 20 degrees on the cue ball to be able to turn it 10 degrees in a swerve. So that's the swerve shot. We'll be doing jumps next. If you like what you saw, hit like, hit subscribe, ding the notification bell, and we will see you next time.